Welcome to episode 84 of Tokyo Alumni Podcast. Today our guest is Sujan Sanku, an international entrepreneur and management professional with an academic background including an MBA, LLM, and a BSE. He's a multilingual consultant with versatile skills in sectors such as accounting, IT, law, finance, and management. Currently, he's the co-founder and COO of 99 InfoSystems Inc., a company known for its commitment to innovative and sustainable technology solutions across various sectors, including fintech, healthcare, and agritech. He is also the Japan chapter president of the Asian African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In addition to his business, Sujan's deeply committed to educational advocacy and believes in the power of life experiences to promote professional and social growth. Sujan and I actually went to high school together. He was a year younger than me, so it was also a great opportunity for me to connect with an old friend. Here's episode 84, Sujan Sanku. Welcome to the podcast, Sujan. Great to have you. This is episode 83. I know we just did like a little intro on you, but can you maybe explain to the people watching in 30 seconds, like what you're up to?
According to the people that know me, I'm supposedly this serial entrepreneur. I basically would like to categorize myself as a consultant. I know that's a very broad term that everybody tends to use nowadays, but that's literally what I do, maybe leaning towards the financial sectors. So I'm kind of like an M&A guy, just elevator pitch for myself.
I think with you, entrepreneurship is definitely the first word a lot of people think of. And I still have this vivid memory. We graduated similar times, right? You were a year younger than me. You had a business while going to ASIJ. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
My first business, obviously I was younger, so it had the company name had my name in it. I was following suit with like the American big companies where the partners' names are literally the company name. Obviously, when I sold it, they changed the name. Good. So my first project was around the financial crisis because I graduated in 06, and officially 06 is kind of when the whole US financial market started crashing. 07, 08, I mean, the effects were global. You could see the whole Lehman shock everybody felt it, normal people. So I did PMI for that, post-merger integration. So basically the US people had to be bailed out by Nomura. So that's pretty much what funded my undergrad, so to speak.
And, I just feel like a lot of kids are interested in business in high school and they do things, right? But in your case, you are actually making like good money, right? So how did this whole thing transpire? Like, what kickstarted it? Like, did you have a mentor to help you throughout this process?
So the first person that comes to mind is probably my father, who was obviously working at Nomura, who got me in the door as a vendor for Nomura. And then I'd also like to point fingers positively to some of the parents, especially the dads, like Mr. Feldman, for example, famous economist, Porte's father, obviously all class of 06 fathers, Show's father. So they're all either from the financial, insurance, or kind of economics. So they all have this vast experience in financial consulting, some area of that. And we used to talk. I used to talk with the parents more so than the kids because I wasn't the type that would go out on Friday nights with friends. I'm usually the guy who stays at school, does extracurricular, then goes home and then works on my business. Maybe even more than I did my homework or assignments. I think everybody knows that I wasn't the most studious in that way. Like I do well on tests, but I never did my assignments. I was too, more preoccupied with things that I knew would end up feeding me.
And that's a really interesting point, I think, about your unique background. You and I both went to ASIJ, and I think there is sort of that elite track that a lot of students take, right? Go get a business degree or finance, go to Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and later go on to MBA. In your case, obviously you started your business in high school, you continued businesses in colleges. We hear in popular media people like, your Steve Jobs, your Elon Musk, et cetera, people that drop out. Why? I'm always curious why you didn't just go that route, because it seemed like you were already doing pretty well in college.
So that was a whole what should I say, argument with my parents, especially my mother. So I mean, I'm Indian, so there's no real cultural option to not get a degree. That's like minimum education. It's kind of like a safety net. If you have a degree, you can always kind of find a job. So if my business fails, if I'm in dire straits, if I'm on the roads, basically, that 4 years of investment of my time would kind of guarantee at least a job at some fast food chain or something. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee nowadays with the economy kind of being shot in most countries, but my mother and I had a very heated debate. Obviously, AP started like May, and then June was kind of graduation. I think it's more or less the same schedule still. So I started applying for unis after I finished all my AP, so like mid to late May.
Wow.
Because I'd kind of made up my mind that I'm not going to college. And my dad was like, do what you want. He paid for, he was one of those parents that paid for ASIJ, not like corporate sponsorship. So obviously I had full freedom, and I was like very confident, maybe overconfident at that point. I mean, I'm still a teenager. My mother kind of steered me in a good way by not giving me that option to just kind of discontinue my academia. So I did take a break during uni after about a year, because my business kind of became too big to remotely manage it. Especially since I was in the US, and the US, like we used to have dropped calls, which was a concept I never heard of in Japan. We had like proper internet in Japan. We never had issues with Skype, for example. We had proper 3G. And
Yeah.
in the US, I couldn't really do Skype and like kind of manage the projects anymore. So I took a 6-month break. I came back, onboarded more people, created a holistic team, and then went back and finished my degree. But again, since I applied only in like May, and like September is when the semester starts, I didn't really have much choices because most application deadlines, even for like late applications, were closed.
Yeah.
So I basically chose any university. I just wanted it to be obviously in the US because I could get credits for my AP. And then my plan was to, transfer at some point. So then after the break, I transferred, and then I transferred. Finally, I got my degree from UMich because, it's public Ivy. It's a better brand value on the piece of paper.
Yeah.
They don't really care whether you only spent the last 2 years there. It's the fact that you graduate from some brand like ASIJ, somewhat unknown international brand. So
What's really intriguing for me too is like, you were saying you were just a teenager. How do you get people to take you seriously when you're 19, because I think we're right now, right, late 30s, and I see a 19-year-old, and in some ways it's hard, right, to take them seriously in certain ways just because of life experience. How did you get people on board?
so this ties straight back into, I think, our education at ASIJ. They teach you to be confident. What I usually say during, like award ceremonies and things like that is the American education system teaches you to be overconfident to the point that you sometimes come off being arrogant, which is actually valued as a positive quality in the professional field. So the reason why Japanese have kind of struggled in the professional field is they're overly humble. They keep bowing down and saying like, yeah, we'll take it back, we'll think about it, we'll consider it, when they could just say yes. Like Americans, even if you can't do it, you kind of say yes. It's like, yeah, of course we can do it. And then, when the project goes out of whack, when the schedule goes, and the budget just flies out of the window, then you apologize. If at all you want to even take the blame for it. Yeah, you try to present yourself in a manner that either says, I know this stuff, just trust me. Or you go the route that I went, which is like, no, I know it.
Wow. And so, you graduate UMich, and again, I think I see this guy that kind of goes the path less traveled by, right? Where much later on, you go back to school for the legal training,
Yeah.
as well as I think you have another master's too, right? One was in
So I did my ECS from UMich, which is like electrical and comp science. It's like a double degree. And then I did my MBA, obviously in UK, because it's a tad bit shorter. It's usually 12 months, but mine was like 18 months. Either ways, it's shorter than the standard 2-year MBA course from the US. And obviously, the foreign exchange rate wasn't really bad back then when I did it. Maybe now is not the most opportune moment, but in 2019, I think I went back from my LLM, a master's in law. And there are very few countries that let you do a master's in law without a LLB, the Bachelor of Law. Um, UK is somewhat of an exception to many of these rules. And I specialized on intellectual property rights. So basically, my focus is something that directly links into my M&A background. It's where Japan is the weakest. They don't value intellectual property very well. So the only reason I went and did that is to better cater to my clients. And again, there's this like complex thing. My dad has a PhD from IIT Madras, which is like cream de la cream of India. It's like University of Tokyo in Japan, or like top Ivy League university in the US. And maybe because I'm the firstborn, I don't know whether I want to admit this, but I always he has a doctor moniker, right? He's like Dr. Sarat Sanku. And I'm just Mr. Like when I send an email, when I get correspondence. And I just want to what should I say, outshine him in some way, be like, no, but I have two masters in two different fields.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say you're going to go get your doctorate now.
I actually was enrolled, and then there's like a maximum stay you can. I think it's like 8 years in the UK. So I never finished my doctorate because the research that I was doing, the paper that I was writing, it kind of felt like I was just redoing my MBA over again. And it was literally just like what should I say, like a synopsis of my life and my work journey. And I was like, this is just like a biography. It's not really like research that others can emulate or use, because it's just my journey, which I think only applies to me, like an Indian who grew up in Japan, went to an American school. I mean, it's a very unique journey. I don't think others can really kind of follow suit or use that. So
yeah, I mean, touching upon that sort of unique background you just alluded to, I mean, you were kind of that Indian kid that spoke Japanese, right? Better than the Japanese. So what was it like before ASIJ, and what was it like at ASIJ for you, with your unique background in regards to schooling?
You might know, but I've been in Japan from 2 years old, so from Hoikuen kindergarten. I still actually have some of those people as good contacts. I'm actually trying to poach some of them so that they join our company next April. So obviously we were very close in elementary school, again, public Japanese schooling system. And then I moved to ASIJ from 8th grade. So I technically never did 7th grade. I joined in 2001 and it was September. So I was like maybe just under a week before 9/11. So there were kind of geopolitical tensions for people who are brown. We weren't really taken so well, even though I'm from a different country. I'm Indian. If you just see me, you wouldn't know whether I'm from the Middle East or whether I'm from one of those countries or one of those religions that might have done something. And I was the only Indian guy at my public Japanese school. Obviously, why would you go to a Japanese school if you have the choice of going to an international school? That's pretty much what all my parents' friends told them, but it was kind of my option, obviously. So I just opted to do a proper foundation in Japanese because I'm in Japan, and friends are locally living around your house. So I just wanted to continue. But then I think in 5th grade, when my parents said, "So do you want to continue with a Japanese, either private or public, but Japanese middle school?" I'm the one who opted to move to the international system because I kind of wanted to get a proper academic background overseas, now kind of learn English properly, or learn all the languages in English, all the subjects in English, basically. So I actually took the test for CAJ, Christian Academy Japan, St. Mary's, which is, I think, a boys' school technically, and ASIJ. I passed all of them, and then they allowed me to choose, and I chose ASIJ because it has socials, and it's a co-ed school. There's like dancing, things that I had never done in the Japanese academic system, because boys are boys, girls are girls when you're in elementary school, either ways, right? You don't really mingle with the other gender. And then literally on the way to school, my parents drove me so that I learned the path the first day. They said I chose the most expensive of the three. And I was like, what? Seriously, it's spring out of me, like now the school starts. But yeah, so very different culture, very different experience. I think the major difference that I felt was the fact that summer vacation is ridiculously long. I mean, it's nearly 3 months of, I mean, okay, a lot of people have to fly back, they go back to meet their extended family. So I understand, but how do you not meet your friends for 3 months? That was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to school, the motivation is not to get good grades. It's honestly to meet your friends, It's to meet your friends, mingle, relax. I think that's what I thought school was, and that's still how I feel academics should be. You should enjoy going to school. It shouldn't be something that you feel as a burden when you wake up. I used to, I mean, whether I did assignments or homework is another thing. I still loved school because, your friends are there. That's the
Yeah.
only time you get to meet them. So, yeah.
Would you say, I actually just had a guest on last episode he was the only Caucasian kid in his class, I think, and maybe a few in his grade, because I think his cousin went there too. Did you feel like an outcast in some ways when you're in Japanese school? Did you feel more integrated at ASIJ, or being, born and raised in Japan, did you actually feel more comfortable in a Japanese school?
That is a hard question to address, and not because I was a target of bullying or anything like that. So I was in the Tama region of Tokyo. I was in Musashino City, Kichijoji to pinpoint, and they were very few foreigners. Period. Back then, early '90s, mid '90s. There wasn't that much immigration. Obviously, there were pockets of Indians in like Edogawa and Koto ward, and then there were quite a few Caucasians in like Minatoku area, maybe in and around Ginza and Marunouchi and Tokyo Station also. But in Tama, it's residential. It's like a bed town. They're only Japanese. You don't really see foreigners to begin with, right? So I was more like the interesting kid, the new play toy. So everyone was kind of open with me. Because I'm one of those rarer types of foreigners in the Tama region. I'm not American, basically. I'm not Caucasian. So there's this cultural exchange that they wanted. So the parents were very close. The kids were like, whoa, your like lunchbox is totally different at like, picnics. Like, what is that? We would trade. And so I think I got very preferential treatment because I was unique. And then I actually think ASIJ, I was more of an outcast because I'm that Indian kid who speaks Japanese. That's like, it's pockets of people that are similar, right? So like there's the Asian group, and then there's the Caucasian group, then there's like the sports group, like the book locker area group, basically. And you could either call me a chameleon, as in I can be in all groups, or you could say that I don't officially fit into any group. Because there were very few people like me, even at ASIJ.
That's a really good point. Yeah, as much as schools like ASIJ like to sort of parade that they're intercultural, right, bicultural, etc., I think you bring up a great point that there are still these enclaves, right? There's these huge groups, and you're right. I can't remember too many students that were from South Asia in our era. So in that regard, you're saying that basically, what's the difference, right? Is in one school you're different, but another school you're different, and it's just kind of like, and that's something to embrace in a lot of ways, right? You're not part of the herd. Earlier you mentioned how you feel like international school education really gave you confidence. Is there anything else that you would feel like international schools are specifically good at or superior over Japanese public schools when it comes to sort of preparing kids for the quote unquote real world?
Public speaking, probably. I don't want to say presentation skills, that's slightly different, but being in front of peers and openly talking about your ideas, that is something that Japanese academia doesn't really teach you to do. It's more subjective. You don't really do objectively, speak in front of crowds. That's just not really taught. And I think just to be able to open up in front of a crowd of people that obviously they're your classmates or your teachers, but that training is something that you can take into the professional field later, and it's the only way that you can disagree in a public forum. If you experience actually speaking, how it feels, right, to put yourself or put your idea out there, because it's personal. It's like my idea, and when somebody gives, whether it's positive or negative criticism, as long as it's some constructive criticism, you still take it to heart because it's something you came up with. It's your brainchild. And as an entrepreneur, I have to present a lot of ideas, concepts, and then when somebody turns it down without giving me the reasons, my blood boils, it kind of curdles. It's like, yo, what's the reasoning? Like, I spent time preparing this, but at least I can speak about it. I don't just go silent. I don't just like disappear from the stage. That's something that I'm pretty sure, I don't know what I should say, Western education, but international education prepares you really, really well for.
Can you tell me, do you see a big difference with sort of that Gen Z or millennial with the Gen X and boomers?
First of all, I think the older generation, entrepreneurship wasn't really an option, at least in Japan's ecosystem. The standard ploy was either you become a public servant or you join a company and you work there till you retire. That whole Shushin Koyo concept. So there is no such thing as, after 2 or 3 years, I step up. There is no like career prospects in that sense. And nowadays, people don't want to work for that medial, 3.5 million yen or something, because you can't really survive.
Yeah.
With that. Like, Japanese like to say that everyone is middle class. I gotta disagree. I think everyone is kind of lower middle class because they can't really go out for like a Friday night or something because they're like, no, I need to ask my wife. But the actual reason is all their money is managed by their wife, and there's not much because they have to save up for their children or buy a house, whatever. So they don't really have disposable income. And a lot of the younger people know that there are less job opportunities now, so they'd rather come up with their own idea and then start a business. So there is a huge mentality difference, but then the people they work with, basically the people that pay them, whether it's B2B or whether it's B2C, are usually these older people. You're usually providing a service or a product for the masses. And in Japan, that's, because of the demography, they're all old people. So sometimes they don't understand what you're trying to kind of serve, especially if it's some, new age technology thing. It might be great, but the people that are going to be using it, the end users, don't even understand it because, again, they're from a different generation. Maybe they didn't even have computers when they grew up, right? So it's all new, and they're like, yeah, it's all gimmicks. It's like a buzzword. It's not a real thing. They kind of tend to say. So it is a uphill battle to kind of succeed with deep tech or anything new. But everyone wants to be able to, work their own free hours, do remote work while they travel overseas. And if you're an entrepreneur, you can manage your own schedule, right? Yeah. So they like that freedom, and they work to get that financial stability and that freedom. So like you said, I think it's a very, very different mentality from when the current boomers, I hate that term, but yeah, when the current boomers were our age or, in their 20s, I don't think they really had that option in Japan because the government wasn't supportive of that. There were no policies for it. There were no easy loans to acquire or grants. But now, I'm part of Tokyo's startup ecosystem. I'm part of like a bunch of those. I'm also part of accelerators and incubators. And as a mentor, when I see an idea that's meaningful, I present them with opportunities to get non-dilutive funding, not even debt-based, grants, basically, which is a newer concept in Japan. It always used to be loans. So it's like debt, right? Yeah. But now they actually have kind of like the Western concept of a grant. So you get money for a good idea, whether it's SDG or not, some public benefit idea, you can get a grant that you don't have to return and you can use it to build your business. So it's not really out of pocket. You're only spending your time, not really risking your life savings or your parents' money or something like that. Yeah. So again, the country has changed to better support it, and people want that freedom. So
it reminds me too of, I think if I read your profile right, when you first started your first business, that's when one of the big laws that changed was you needed hyakuman, right? Like about 10 grand to start a business. And if I'm not mistaken, it became like a penny, right?
Well, it became, I think, 1 yen. So at the current rate, it's technically, less than a yen. It's like 0.6 or 0.7.
So that's a
Sense.
great point. I mean, and that's only 20 years ago, right? So you're talking like 25, 30 years ago, it was like for a new
Yeah.
grad, Kakuman is a lot of money. Like, while
Yeah.
paying
So
food.
usually you get like a loan from your parents. That's how people you start the business, or they would kind of poach their business team, whoever they're working with at the company, and everybody's kind of like co-owner. And that really changed. I think it's like 18 years ago, because I think it was 2006, the new law, Shin Kaishaho or something it's called. Obviously, it's nearly 2 decades, so it's not new anymore, but that was the law they passed. And they did make the capital requirements much less, but they also made it easier to do this share-based, like C Corp or S Corp, basically. And it's easier to get funding if you can dilute it, not this Yugen Gaisha, which is like limited. Like, well, I can't really call it LLC, but like the original format in Japan,
Yeah, yeah.
which was, if you translate, it becomes like limited liability operation. But they stopped that so that it's easier to kind of give out your shares and get funding. So yeah, and that's only 18 years ago. So yeah.
That's wild. And it's such good timing with you, right? They often say timing's everything. That was a few years later. Maybe you never would have started that company and things could have
Well,
been.
yeah, but it probably would have meant that I actually applied to uni earlier, and I probably would have had a totally different resume.
Good point. Fair point. Do you ever feel like so you're saying the ecosystem is definitely more conducive to young entrepreneurs now? I recently actually was at the Scramble thing in Shibuya. I don't know if
Mhm,
you're
mhm.
if you work with that, right? All these young entrepreneurs. Yet, compared to the United States, it's not quite as fertile, right? And is there ever a concern about brain drain of like the guys that just kind of start in Tokyo or Japan, but then they just end up taking those ideas to like California or Texas or whatever?
I think that's 100% happening. We've hosted 3 or 4 people, not via the Chamber of Commerce, but via our business, to go and link up with investors or potential business people who have synergy in Silicon Valley. So obviously, any tech related R&D, everybody the go to is Kelly, and it's easy to get funding. Obviously, it's kind of post COVID or during COVID, it slowed down, because a lot of banks were failing and it wasn't the most opportune moment. But still, a lot of our people want to kind of dabble in the US side because it's easier to get a higher valuation, and they don't really look at your financial records or Excel. Basically, they prefer your passion, they look at your idea, and they value the concept, the business. They don't really value the balance sheet so much.
Hmm. Do you feel
So
that's also because they just have deeper pockets as well?
possibly, I mean, buyouts are super common in the US, not so much in Japan. It's usually like an IPO. So the de facto kind of exit strategy is very different. It's not to go public. It's more like I will sell it to some company like Amazon or Facebook that's big, and then have my bunch of money
Hmm.
that's not just value, that's actual cash, liquid cash that you can reinvest in your next business. So most of these people who move to the Western Hemisphere, they usually become a serial entrepreneur.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's not like they do the whole fire thing. They
Yeah, yeah,
stay in business, but it's some other new idea, because usually there's like a non-compete or something that you can't be in the same industry once you sell it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you kind of do something parallel or something new, and you keep starting businesses. Literally, that becomes your work. I start a new business, I sell it. I start a new business, I sell it. Yeah.
And it's almost like passing on the torch, right? They find some other younger entrepreneur,
Yep.
help on them. That's a really
Yep.
unique ecosystem. So, as we kind of enter these last bits of the interview, I just wanted to touch back upon ASIJ because it is the Tokyo Alumni Podcast. We've talked about sort of the pros of
Mhm.
international school. Do you have any specific classes, teachers that you really recall, helped you become the person you are today?
Um, Obviously, they're teachers you like. They might not be the best mentors, but they are teachers you like, for their stories, their antics, the way they teach, they present themselves. Um, I would say the teachers that kind of showed me the fun in, or sorry, showed me the fun of the STEM subjects.
Hmm.
Um, those are the only subjects that I actually was willing to spend time and work on projects. There are exceptions even to that rule. Like the cheetah for biology was just just totally on a different spectrum. But
What is the? Do you want to explain really quickly what the cheetah for biology is?
seriously, okay. So um, it was I think, sophomore year high school, 10th grade project. My teacher was Mr. Chaikin, probably the sternest, like most serious-ish teacher. Like everyone's kind of scared of him. But it was a project that I think had few rules. Like we had to use organic material, we had to make something and write a poster about that animal. Obviously, it's biology. Uh, I chose cheetah. It is my favorite animal. It has been since elementary school. That's even in like my elementary school Japanese yearbook. Um, doesn't mean I really like to do arts and crafts. So I literally went to the boys' bathroom, got like a paper towel, stuck a face with a pen, and stuck a keychain, and I was like cheetah, and I got a 0. It's pretty bad, pretty bad. But I mean, again, I still have respect for Mr. Chaikin. He did teach me a lot of biology. That was his job. But biology has a lot of things you have to memorize, and I'm more like a conceptual learner. So I would always have my iPod. Like if you look at the class pictures for like calculus, I always had like, obviously we had physical earphones back then. It wasn't like Bluetooth. So I would have my iPod playing some music in one ear and listening to the teacher. So it seems like I'm not focused, but that's the way I focus, because I don't really take notes. I would just listen in class. Because I mean, if the lecture doesn't teach you what you're supposed to be learning, I think that's a useless teacher and a useless class, honestly. So I literally passed all my courses just by listening to the teacher's talk. And yeah, so I think teachers that actually were mentors in that way would be Chambers for chemistry. I had him for chemistry and AP Chem. Mr. O'Brien, I had him for math quite a few times, calculus also. Yeah, they definitely had very unique backgrounds. Like Mr. Chambers, he was on the UN Peace Boat. Mr. O'Brien had flown over the North Pole as a pilot. So they're like professionals in the field. And they're also, your academic mentors. So it was very, very cool to listen to their stories. And I think those kind of, not the class stuff, but the side stories that they would keep us entertained with, those are the things that really shaped me as a person. So yeah, they were definitely my mentors in high school. ASIJ, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recall Mr. Chambers' stories about Africa.
Yeah. Like the hippo that barks. Yeah.
What?
Like the hippo that barks.
No, I just remember him on LSD riding a bicycle. That story is ingrained.
Yeah, he had a lot of stories. Yeah, he had a lot of, I mean, good stories though, right? Something that normally you wouldn't experience. Of course, we don't even know if it's true, but good stories nevertheless.
That's true. All right, so I think we're gonna bring this podcast home now. I like to ask the guests at the very end where they see themselves 4 or 5 years, 10, 20 years down the line. So yeah, internet's forever, so we can archive this 2024. You can check it out in 2034. So where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
I want to be a kind of global player. As an entrepreneur, I have different goals and dreams and aspirations, but I want to be on the global stage where if you think of some industry, any industry, health, finance, you would know me. So like, it's not like, I know him from ASIJ, class of 06. It's more like, he's an SME. Like in this field, in this subject, he is the top honcho. We all know him. That's my aim. Obviously, I mentioned, my mentors, my classmates' parents. They were super, super well known, right? I basically want to be like them because, I mean, financial success is one thing. I think I've already attained that to some extent, to some degree. And I'm moving towards this more like kind of giving back to people I know, giving back to society, doing a lot of SDG projects. One is, by the Chamber of Commerce. I do a lot of NGO related work. Doctors Without Borders, we do a bunch of projects. We do similar projects in EdTech also. You're a teacher, so you might know that there's a lot of accessibility issue to education, even in India, for example, right? I want to kind of be known as like a good guy, obviously, but I also want to be known as the de facto go-to person in some industry. I still haven't really found which industry I want that to be. Maybe healthcare, because it's a perpetual need. You
Mhm.
know, health care requirements are not going to diminish. They're probably only going to grow more and more complex. So yeah, that's my
Yeah,
goal.
off air, we talked about how you work 365 days a year. So I hope that maybe you don't forget to take a rest as you pursue that goal. And it was great catching up with you today. And it's funny how certain memories, right, are brought back. When you just mentioned the cheetah earlier, I do have a vivid memory of that cheetah. So it's funny, right, how some things stick with you 20 years later when brought back to life through conversation. But on that note, that was episode 83. Sujan Sanku, thank you so much for coming on air today.